Maytag Dryer, Bravo. Complaint, dryer's taking too long to dry. Power to ground is adequate. Door switch is good. Timer is advancing. Push to start is good. Establish temperature readings to determine if it's the structure of the house ventilating, hot air not escaping from the dryer, or if it's the operating thermostat of the dryer. Temperature checks. Temperature readings. Looking for 165 in 2.5 minutes. Dryer is rapidly reaching temperature. At 135 in less than 45 seconds. $145. Standard dryers, non-electronic for even temp control, but your standard dryer will reach 165 in 2.5 minutes. This dryer gives an indication of a short in the heating element housing or a obstruction in the blower housing. Once temperature is reached at 165, now to check the thermometer will allow 2 degrees ambient temperature and then turn the element off. Operating thermostat checks good. On the low side, optimum temperature is 126, and that will be a completion of one cycle. Dryer reach 133, 126 plus or minus 10 degrees. So that is within tolerance on the first cycle. Dryer is sending power to ground to the element. That confirms the element is receiving 240 volts through the line 1 house ground to motor, and from line 2 timer, push to start switch, door switch, then to and through the operating thermostat, then to the element. Thermostat is working properly. Probable cause would be bad timer, and also maintenance check, short to ground to the element to the housing, or to the element housing. Declining to low temperature, 127, 126 is optimum. On the second cycle, thermostat re-engaged, 2 degrees of radiant heat, losing radiant heat, and then reapply power to the element. That checks good. Element checks good. Operating thermostat checks good. Temperature appears to be within tolerance. If there was an obstruction in the blower housing, temperature would exceed 185 degrees, which then would sever the high limit fuse, and which would then turn the motor off, which would then turn the element off to prevent a potential fire. Thermostat's working properly. Heater is being turned on and off. Maytag Dryer. Timer appeared to be not advancing. To test advancement on the cool down, I'm going to time duration of end of cycle. The timer should advance under 6 minutes. If the timer does not advance under 6 minutes, then the timer motor is damaged and the timer would need to be replaced. If the timer does advance under 6 minutes, complaint is that dryer takes 2 cycles to dry clothes, and also it takes a longer duration of time after selection. Timer does not advance. After checking continuity to the element and also checking airflow obstruction in the blower housing and the exhaust system, and also checking temperature, dryer met all measurements of temperature. On the low end it met 126, and on the high end it met 165. Which verifies the operation thermostat is turning the element on and off within tolerance. Timer advanced off in 1 minute 30 seconds. Timer motor internally is good. Due to complaint, clothes are taking longer to dry, which is a difficult complaint to prove. All that can be done is to check the appliance for its operational property in the electrical system, which has been performed. The electrical system and the blower housing and air obstruction has been verified that there is no air obstruction in the housing of the dryer, and also the electrical system is maintaining tolerance for the element to receive 240 volts and turning on and off at designated time. The exhaust to the house would be of question. Timer checks good and heating system checks good. In comparisons to the existing timer and the new timer, the tension of the hand dial is the same. Generally, there's not this much tension in the turning of the timer. And verifying that it does turn itself off at the cool down, power to ground to the timer motor, and so this existing timer motor is working. It is turning itself off at the end of the cycle. And also the electrical system or the heating system appears to test adequately. And so the house exhaust would be at question. The way to check or isolate your house exhaust from dry time is to remove the exhaust from the actual unit and run your dryer without the exhaust attached to your unit and see if there's a comparison in dry time. If the dry time improves, then you know that the house is inadequate and it would need to be, your vents would need to be clean. If the dry time remains the same, then there's inadequate thermal temperature, which is the operating thermostat, may be turning the heater off, and that's not the case with this dryer. And so settings at low side of 126 and setting at high side at 168 degrees, this dryer has met those temperatures readings. At this time, I would recommend removing the exhaust off of the dryer and testing a couple of loads without the exhaust attached onto the dryer to see if you notice a difference in dry time.